This is Digital Voices with Bo Tiffany, inspiring and providing real insight to our listeners with every story, exploring deep stories behind every guest. Please welcome your host, Bo Tiffany.
Hey Connor, how are you doing? Thanks for coming back on the show.
Good. Well, how are you doing, Bo?
I'm doing great, man. It's good to reconnect. I felt like we had a good connection last time, so I'm happy to have you back on. And what's new in your world? Let's start there.
Business is great. It's with voiceover, it's you never know. You never know what's coming down the path of your day. So you might wake up one morning and you're the voice of a fox. By noon, you are doing a pirate, and in the afternoon, like I did a few weeks ago, you're doing a video on how to perform an autopsy. So you never know what really what mood you're gonna be in. You have to, as an actor, you have to kind of shift. So it's kind of all over the place.
How do you find your gigs? I guess that's a question our listeners probably like a little insight on.
Yeah.
Is it best to have someone represent you, or is it best just to, like Fiverr is kind of big these days? Like, what do you suggest?
Well, yeah, for Fiverr, I think it is great for someone who has never really dealt with clients, and it kind of gives you a feel for probably handling client requests and that sort of thing. But as you get larger and you want to charge, a lot more for your work, if you feel that you're of a certain degree good or, better, you can do that. For me, I have several agents, quite a few agents. If I fired all of them, so that would get rid of like maybe 10% of my business. They bring me the large stuff. So anytime I do voice work for Disney or for NBC or Crayola, whatever, that is most of those are agents that bring me those big jobs. But 85 to 90% of my work is small and medium market businesses, and those I get through direct marketing. So if someone's just now starting in voiceover and they're saying I'm not going to make it, or I can't do it because I don't have an agent, that's a fallacy. You don't have to have an agent to do voice work. You can promote yourself. And if you're on a platform like Fiverr or one of those, it would help you because clients are going to that. But I myself believe that you get your best clients by direct marketing, not relying on Fiverr or Voice123 or voices.com, those what we call pay to play sites where you pay hundreds of dollars a year to be represented on their roster. The best way is to develop personal relationships with the clients and get to know them, check in with them. How are they doing? Their kid graduated high school or is in college, or they were sick and you're checking on, you develop a personal relationship where you check in on them every now and then, and through newsletters or emails or text, whatever. They may not hire you today, but down the road, it's just like you hiring a plumber. If the plumbers let you know and put a bug in your ear, that way, if a pipe in your bathroom breaks, you're like, oh gosh, I'll call Jerry's Plumbing and Heating. But every day you're not thinking, man, I want to use Jerry's Plumbing and Heating. I'm just looking for, it's a little bit different for a boutique video production company or a small guys. They are thinking of voiceovers. They're needing voiceovers. And even in this market or this day and age where, you and I were talking before the podcast about AI, there's always going to be an audience that wants the warmth of a human being. And it's just going to make that much more, whether they're podcasters like yourself or they're either they're copywriters or writers or voiceovers or artists, there's always going to be a market that's going to pay for that human certified element. For the people that are very budget minded, of course, AI is a lot more cost effective than going out and getting a voiceover or hiring a copywriter or an artist or something like that. But, as you matriculate up the system and touch with these larger companies, they do want authenticity. I don't think that is necessarily going to go away. but is AI is here. It's definitely something to be reckoned with. You can't hide under the covers. It's here. It's a dawning of a new. It's just like, I think when the internet happened upon us, we turned the page of history, and we're turning pages of history with AI, just trying to catch our breath. And this is a conversation for another day, but I think that it in itself is going to have to be regulated in a way that we regulate the medical industry or whatever industry, because I think that the deep fakes and the stealing people's identity and voices with AI is scary business.
Yeah.
If I'm a telemarketer and I'm selling a financial package, if I, do a search on you and find out, let's say your parents or whatever, your mom, and I have an AI call your mother, and I'm just talking to her on the phone, and I just get little snippets of her voice and analyze it, teach the AI her voice. And then later, all this is automated, let's say, then 2 weeks later, I call you back with your mother's voice telling you, you need to invest in X, Y, and Z. That's frightening, and that shouldn't happen, because there's a lot of stuff going into that. Can they fake your mother's phone number so that you answer the call? I don't know. I'm sure they can. All these things come into play. And the same thing, if you're an on-camera actor, Tom Cruise, I steal your face and now I create films with my own Tom Cruise. Why do I need Tom Cruise? But we call him Tom Bruise. Or I don't want to hire Connor Quinn. I'm going to hire an AI to recommend. What am I saying? To reprimand. What's the word? Reprimand.
Represent or
or recreate. What am I? I think I've had a stroke, Bo. So recreate Connor's voice. Train the AI to do that. So is it possible? Yeah, it's like all of us have stuff out there. You have podcasts with hours of your voice, and I've got thousands of demos and commercials. Tom Cruise have thousands of hours. So it's a scary thing to be deal with, but boy, I've gone down a rabbit hole. But anyway, so going back to the representation, I get my clients through direct marketing, and even as tough and scary as it is in this day and age, that's what you have to do. Just my last little tidbit on this is I tell people always market, because we want to do like a business model. We constantly fill the funnel. So imagine a funnel is going into the jar, and those clients, all these potential clients, are being pushed into the funnel, and they go down into the jar, and maybe one or two of them will call you and say, hey, I need a voiceover. So whatever we're selling, we're filling that funnel with potential clients of, whether to sell a podcast, a sponsor, or maybe we're in the construction industry and we're looking for, we're roofers. We're looking for people who want a new roof. We're looking for those potential clients. We got to fill that funnel, whatever business we're in. So constantly filling it. And that side note I was telling you about is I keep track of who I send out information to or who I market to. And it might come later. Well, they'll email me and say, hey, Connor, I finally got a project I think that your voice would be perfect for. So a guy did that last week. And you know what, Bo? The strangest thing, I was like, who is this guy? So I looked back. I had marketed to him 3 years ago. He hung on to that email and said, for a rainy day, if something comes up. So when you market, they may not want to hire you right now. They are not going to hire you right now. They may not hire you next week. They may not hire you for a year. But that's what the beauty of marketing is you constantly keep yourself in front of them. It's all part of our branding all across the social medias, is just being able to stay in front of your potential customers, and the ones that you are in front of already is keep it interesting, keep it real. So that's how I get my clients, and how I foster my clients is, we could do a podcast just on marketing alone. And there's a lot I need to learn, because the industry of marketing, it's changing hourly by the minute, I think we're all students.
You really hit two things on the head for me. One thing that I'm a firm believer is networking. There's that 6 degree of separation that goes along with that I think is important too. You can usually find anyone anywhere within the 6 circle or the 6 degrees of separation from your friend
Right.
groups. The other thing that I find that's interesting as well is that you're talking about planting seeds, and if you live by planting seeds every day, whether it's promoting yourself or your work or just in the things that you do, it's amazing how those seeds then catch root and start to grow. And so I
It's
really
stunning
appreciated
how,
that. Yeah,
yeah, because when you plant a seed, you don't expect a large elm tree right away. That's ridiculous.
right.
But you plant that seed so that, and all of a sudden, a month later, you're like, oh my gosh, there's a sprout there. We're starting to see a strawberry pop, whatever it is. And
Hmm.
just like that's what's the fun of me of direct marketing is that I believe in multiple streams of incomes, and that can be within like your podcast world or my voiceover world. I have multiple outlets that I reach out to, different clients. I put myself in front of medical companies. I put myself in front of people that produce theatrical trailers, animation. All of them, they're all in show business, but they're all kind of distinct. Well, I mean, the medical industry is not in show business, but you know what I mean. So by having multiple streams of income, it's just like fishing. If you're in a boat and you're going to have one fishing line, you're going to catch a fish probably. But if you have 8 rods in the water, hopefully there's not a limit on how many you can catch in a day.
Right.
Voiceover, podcasting, for marketing, there isn't a limit. That's what the beauty of it is like you say, every little thing you do, whether it's just improving your brand, maybe it's making a little change to your logo, or maybe reaching out on social media and just telling people, hey, this is my shingle and this is what I do. And it's important, I think, in networking is, it's more important. People are really apt to listen if you can tell them something that will help them, instead of saying, this is what I do. They're really the newsletters that I put out there, and the reactions I get are always from the small little life hacks or business hacks that will help them in their business, because we're all trying to survive. We're all struggling, and it, not all of us are billionaires by any means. So we're
Right.
trying to make ends meet and trying to do what we enjoy doing. And I think in this day and age, it's just great just to be honest with everyone on the same surface, and treat the client just like you would treat even better than you treat your family, because some people don't don't do that well. But
Right.
just be honest with them, and that's how you build it. It's all about connection. Social media, yeah, it's kind of distracting, but it also is great in a way because it allows you to interact with uh people all the time. You can control that, who you talk to, and who you hear from.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there's a certain amount of synergy that comes when you have your ducks in a row or the funnels aligned together, so the ones that do fall off and tend to get sucked up within other areas, if that makes sense at all. I know,
No,
like for me, so I do my podcast and I work with, interesting stories, but also important stories and topics. And then I deal with, experts, which is, is important for those particular subjects. But then I also get into fun things, try to liven it up, So I've had everything from paranormal, just things to lighten it up. But then I also started a home care coordinating company along with a medical reform here in Wisconsin, which are just, they all
wow,
blend together,
yeah,
which for me is a real pleasure because, every day is an enjoyable adventure. I've been finding a lot of cooperative people and a lot of really unsung heroes, if you will, within various things that, I've been able to bring to light. And so that's been a powerful motivator for me too. Some things in life, obviously finances, making that dollar is super important, but some of the things that we do, might not net us money at the time. It's more like planting seeds for down the road, or just making those ripples in that the pond of life, in a positive way.
It is. I think back to a story. This is in Hollywood near the Paramount Studios. Let me back up. So I had gone to several cattle calls. So people that are not familiar with that term out of the industry, a cattle call is what a producer or a casting director, if they're looking for a certain type of actor, they they cast a broad net to all the agents saying, we're looking for a male 25 to 54 and who can do magic tricks and can juggle or whatever they're looking for. They put it out there. And so all those agents will send their person that meets whatever criteria to the cattle call. And that's why they call it a cattle, because a lot of people show up. Well, it's a real struggle, and it's really mentally debilitating going to those. You're one of hundreds. How are you going to get the role? It's Hollywood. And so a friend of mine, I was a kid, I was probably 14. Yeah, probably about 13 or 14. And he was getting a lot of them. And I said, how do you do that? And he's like, well, I'm a triple threat, man. I can sing, I can dance, I can, well, I couldn't really dance. And he's like, man, you've got to know how to dance. And so if they're looking for that, or even if they're not looking, you do it, they're like, this cat, he's good. And I was like, who do you learn from? And so he gave me a name of a lady that lived just to the other side of Paramount Studios. Another elderly Black lady that had, I guess he had gone to for many years. And the way he described her is like, what would she know about dancing? He was describing her kind of elderly, and it's like, and she taught you dancing? Oh yeah, she's great. She's terrific. So go by. She doesn't use phone or anything. You have to go by there. I'm like, this is strange. So one day I found myself, we had been shooting on the Paramount lot for something, and I thought, I didn't have a car. I wasn't old enough. I'm still a kid, but it was within walking distance. So I thought, I'm going to try to find, we didn't have Google Maps, by the way. So it was, by
we had the
foot
foldable
and by,
maps.
yeah, exactly. How the heck do I find her? Anyway, I came across her house. I went up and, I was shaking in my boots, knocked on the door, and this kind woman came to the door, and, I said, I'm sorry to bother you, but I was told that you do dancing lessons, because she didn't look like what I would think. She didn't have a dancer's physique, and she's like, yes, I do. That's what I do, is I train actors for dancing. And I'm like, I have to learn. So we talked a little bit, and she had mentioned her rates. I couldn't afford it. And I didn't know. I was trying to look away. How do I get out of this conversation? Because I don't want to waste her time. She's so sweet, fill in the blank. So finally there was a lull in the conversation. I said, I don't want to, take you out longer than you're here. I've got to let you know I can't afford your rates. So I'm sorry I wasted your time. Maybe I'll get some gigs and can afford it. I would love to come by. And she says, I want to bless you with lessons. And I'm like, no, I can't do that. I just, I'm embarrassed. I don't want to hand out and she said something that stuck with me my whole life right here. She grabbed me by my arm and she looked right into my eyes and said, don't get in the way of my blessing.
Wow.
And she said
That's powerful.
she was stern. She was a kind old lady, but there was this sternness to her, like a grandmother telling you, get out of the cookie jar. And I listened to her and I said, what? That didn't even make sense to me. I'm kindly saying no to something she's trying to give away. And she's adamant about no. And she said, look, I blessed you. I'm going to give you lessons. I want to give you lessons. This is a blessing that I'm giving you. What I believe, and it is true, it's not just belief, she said, if I do this for you, I get kindness returned to me threefold. And I'm like, I've heard that a million. He's like, whatever, it's crazy. And she's like, it is real. So don't get in the way of my blessing, because I'm doing this. I'm going to be getting some good stuff back somewhere. The universe is going to meet me. And all of a sudden it was about kindness, but it was cool because she knew by putting, theoretically, I'm putting up $20. I'm going to get $60 back. So it was kind, but it was also, she was doing it earnestly because I'm going to be living on some good vibes coming back to me. And so I did. I studied with her for a little bit over a year with her different dance, and I started increasing, winning auditions. And the absolutely crazy fact of this is about 10 or 11 years ago, we had gone back to that part of LA, the other side of Paramount. I could not find her. It was like her house did not. It was like it was in a pocket universe. And I described it. We talked to a few of the neighbors. They didn't even know, they'd been there 30 years. They had no idea what I was talking about. I was like, was this all made up? Was this just some grandmother that had hoodwinked me? But it wasn't. She specifically told great tales about working with Cesar Romero and great stars back in the 30s and 40s. And it was so real. I mean, it's just, and what she taught me were real moves and of the time, of the 80s. It was just absolutely amazing. So I just was like, that Alabama, I don't know if you listen to country music, but Alabama has this one song called Angels Among Us. And was she an angel? Was that I don't, whatever your religion, whoever might be listening, I'm sure everybody has a million different religions or maybe no religion. So, but even those among you who probably think I'm crazy, that might be atheist or whatever, I don't know how to explain it. So this is maybe a paranormal event, or maybe it's just, I just couldn't find the dang house and the neighbors were like, you need to move along. But anyway, that advice stuck with me. Do not get in the way of my blessing.
You hit something on the head. I totally believe in angels, whether they're metaphorical or like you said, people that just come into your life at the right time. And
Right.
I've every person I think that I've interviewed almost knows who that person is or those people are in their lives. I know I've had a few as well, and it's amazing how the universe is. And I'm very much a pay it forward person.
Yes.
For any blessings that I get, I definitely want to double or triple those going out.
And pass it on. I love doing that I don't know if you've had the experience or you do the experience. If I'm through a drive-through, every now and then, it's like, what did the guy behind me order? And they tell me, and at
Absolutely.
least if it wasn't like $300 order, you know, I'll buy their tab. And they're like, what? It's like, and a lot of times they are already used to hearing that. They're like, okay, cool. They've already
Yep.
had people do this, which is encouraging to me. So what's great, I don't stick around to see what is the kid's reaction, when the guy comes forward. And no, you just move on about your life. And then when he goes forward, just like it has happened to me, you go to pay your bill and they go, well, the lady in front of you already did it, bought it
Mhm.
for you. I'm like, what?
And
And
I've
she
had it
said,
where
pass it on.
yeah, well, I sometimes will roll it to the person behind me, because depending on the situation that you're in life, some people really need that,
Yes.
that really means a lot to me. It was touching. That was, well, that was a gift enough to me to be
Right.
able to then pass that along,
Yeah, even if
to
you're
the
just buying a coffee. Well, I mean, Starbucks right there,
absolutely.
that's $70,000 that you're right there. But no, I'm just saying
It's getting there.
whether it's $20 order or it's maybe a $5 order,
Yeah,
like you say, maybe they're on their way right now to the hospital because their dad is dying, or maybe
right.
they're just, it's been a hectic day and they're headed to the office, or maybe it's just a normal day. Whatever
Maybe
it
they just
is
needed a
that,
smile. Yeah,
yes, a little bit of
and
sunshine in their life.
everybody needs that.
I've yet to meet someone, maybe other than the Grinch, that doesn't want a little sparkle.
Oh,
It's like we all want a little sunlight coming in, you know. So I
I
believe
love
in
that.
angels as well, and I think they're um
Have you ever done the Grinch for voiceover work?
no, the what I've been asked to do is it's kind of interesting, is when they originally did the animation with Chuck Jones for the Grinch. Chuck Jones, the great animator, animated it, and they had Boris Karloff narrate it, and he was the voice of the Grinch. And a little side note that's absolutely fascinating. Of course, one of the songs that came out of that was, um, the Grinch who stole Christmas, was that famous song that everybody sings. I don't.
I'm a mean one,
Yeah,
Mr.
you're a mean one,
Grinch.
Mr. Exactly. I didn't
Yeah,
want to, for
something
copyright,
like
I didn't
that.
want to, but you
That's
know
right.
what I mean.
Oh, sorry.
Well, no. I mean, I just didn't know if, we don't want to get banned or whatever, but it's like, would have to
Right.
pay a royalty. But You're a Mean One, Mr. Grinch. That song was written for him and they were ready for Boris Karloff to record it. And he kindly told them, I don't sing, can't sing, not going to do it. What are we going to do now? They went to a veteran voiceover who he's renowned for working with Disney. His name was Thurl Ravenscroft. What a great name, right?
Oh, yeah.
He was the voice of Tony the Tiger for 40 years, 50 years, maybe, before he passed away. And he was in a million Disney cartoons. If you ever saw, did you see Jungle Book from 1966? So
Yes.
Shere Khan was this very deep voiced tiger. That was an actor by the name of George Sanders. Well, he couldn't sing either. And they needed him to sing where he comes in and he makes this grand entrance when these buzzards are singing. And he goes, that's what friends are. I can't sing, are for. And he goes way down like 100 octaves. Well, that was Thurl Ravenscroft singing for George Sanders. Same thing here. They wanted him to sing for Boris Karloff. And so he did. And it's him that's performing You're a Mean One, Mr. Grinch. And so that being said, I did that probably about 5 years ago. They had me do a little narration where it was kind of like the Grinch. It was like I can't even remember the lines, but it was like way down in the valley was a great little town called Whoville, and the Grinch didn't like that at all. So what he did was he come up with a very deceptive plan. This plan involved his dog, poor dog, and the little people of Whoville were totally unsuspecting of what was going to happen on Christmas Eve. So it was, it was this Mayan, embellishment. It's like, what is that voice? I have no idea.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of inspired by Boris Karloff, but it's like a mutt that you have. I don't know what the heck it is. It's a little bit of Pekingese. It's a little bit of bulldog. It's pit bull. What is it? It's a mutt. So I don't know. Yeah. So that was the voice that I probably used. I actually have that
Frankenweenie
holiday demos. Yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm. It gives me a thought. How much effects are used on voiceover work? Like vocal effects. Like actually, let me get more specific.
Okay.
When you're doing a vocal chain for recording, what kind of stuff are you adding? What's your typical vocal chain look like?
Okay, so a lot of people getting into voiceover think of what are we hearing? So that's the kind of gear I'm going to need to get. And a lot of people that are getting into voiceover are, they're music nerds, they're gearheads. They want great gear. Who doesn't? But the truth is you don't. Most of the producers and stuff that I work with want it naked, so to speak. They just want the raw, the way I record it. So literally, I normally use a Neumann U87 microphone, but I was doing a lot of promo work today, so I had the MKH416. So this goes right into what I call it's a Focusrite interface, and that just changes the signal from XLR to USB, goes right into the computer, and it feeds right into my DAW, my digital audio workstation, which is Adobe Audition. And I use very little anything. I might use a tiny little bit of compression, which these are all effects from waves that I use, and a little what they call RX8, which helps me with the hard S's and the plosives, and kind of cleans up that stuff. But for the most part, the producers don't want anything. They don't even really want that. They just want they'll fix it in post. That's true. So a lot of guys getting into voiceovers or girls, they're trying to come up with this fancy and have it polished sounding and have it, compressed and equalized, but they don't want that. So it's kind of boring. It's a boring answer. They just want raw data. It's
No, I
not
think
like
that's important.
it is.
It's so basically the thing for people to think about that are listening to this, if you're looking to get into the work,
Right.
is you don't need all the bells and whistles that their mastering studio is going to be possibly applying. You're looking at getting them a flat EQ'd, a flat good signal that they can then work with. And
Absolutely.
with that said, just to finish my final thought, is it like a 48 kilohertz? Are you doing it at like 96, or what's the best recording range for high quality and high fidelity?
So most all of my clients, and those are like the experts that I go to, because after all, they're the ones paying me. So it's like that's
Right.
who I need to cater to, is whatever they want to set up. So I record basically at 48K, and you want to do mono, not stereo. You want to do mono, and
Now, let me
I'm
ask why. I'm surprised by that a little bit.
oh, okay,
I
go
thought
ahead.
with stereo, you might like I use a modulating microphone. It's a Sphere DLX, so it emulates all the top mics, and it's a rather expensive microphone, but it needs two channels, so you have to record in stereo. Why is mono important for you?
So the building up, especially in for the layering, and this goes back to audio production, where it's for radio and uh radio commercials, audio commercials in general, but then it transferred over as they did television, and they were having a voiceover. So if you have one channel, they're able to use that, and if they need to, it's easy to make it a stereo voiceover, but they're losing a little bit of quality if they go backwards. So it's better just to have it in the one channel. And the music, what this is kind of what's strange about it, is the music is in stereo. A lot of that's in stereo already, but all the vocal elements, and even like a lot of the sound effects and stuff is mono.
Mm-hmm.
And at the end of it, it's processed and they come out, they put it in stereo. But yeah, it's just, I think it's easier for them to manipulate and able to, it's cleanly, especially in their timeline of laying out the editing slots. It's easier to have just move around one track for voiceover and then later duplicate it, because it's not the voice doesn't necessarily carry the piece. And even if it does, we can process it so that it is stereo. That, at least that's what I feel. I'm not an audio expert, but from the very beginning, now I didn't really worry about any of that back in the days of when I first started voiceover. I just simply went into a studio and recorded. I didn't even know the names of the microphones, for God's sake. It was just go in, and it's union, don't touch the microphones, read your script and leave. So later, as I had left LA, I think I told the story where my parents were ill. My dad didn't want to go to a nursing home, and I didn't want him to go. And we're a family of 6 kids, and none of us wanted that. And everybody had things going on in their lives, but I could come back and take care of them or see what the situation was. And so I had flown here, being Oklahoma, to check in on them. And they had a daily nurse, or forget what the term is, kind of like a doctor. I think it's a PA. Is that a
Somebody
physician
that
assistant,
visited the
basic?
home. Oh yeah,
Yeah,
physician's
yeah,
assistant, PA.
yeah. So she could make uh she could say, well, I think we need to prescribe such and such here. And it was just easier on them, because they're in home and they didn't have to go anywhere or anything like that. And then as he got very ill, of course, we had to thank God for hospice. Boy, talk about angels. Jeez.
Yeah.
That's a whole, that's a whole science of bless them. They know what to look for. They know how to help. They know not when to push and everything. Anyway, so I'd come back, and all of a sudden it's like, now I'm in Oklahoma. I've still got to do voiceover, but it's costly to fly back and forth and do voiceover. Technology slowly started catching up, and we had things like Source Connect and these digital audio things that allowed me to record in a studio in my home and be directed live from anywhere in the world with Source Connect. They could connect with me and get quality audio. So they're recording maybe in Las Vegas or Los Angeles. I'm in Oklahoma, and maybe the director is in Sydney, Australia, but they're able to get quality voiceover from that, just as if I was in a session with them in LA. And a lot of producers at that point started saying you can self-record, so record the audio and get it back to us. So I, like yourself, I had never recorded. What do I do? I'm going to record in stereo. I mean, we're in the stereo. I mean, it's not the 1990s. That's really old. It's the 2020s. So what are we doing? This would have been 2013, 2014. It's a modern age. We need stereo. Why would you record anything in mono? Well, I was quickly told by all of the clients I was sending stuff, please send us only mono. And so I asked one of the engineers, and that's what he said. It's easier to manipulate the audio if you record in mono rather than, we have to reverse osmosis, and it's just more, we lose a layer if we do that, but we can always make you stereo.
I think it depends on the purpose. For me, the reason I kind of asked that question is, so with this Sphere DLX microphone, it has two outputs. So instead of just having one XLR, it has two. So it records, because the capsule has a front and a back, which it records separately, or you can actually turn it and it records in stereo.
Wow.
Great for certain instruments. Yeah. But I didn't know in terms of production, if that vocal chain was better on a stereo because of having something like this. You can manipulate it more or not, but it sounds like that's not really a factor. When it comes to microphones, they can be extremely expensive. And, I started out with SM7B, I guess. Right. That's the same great microphone. Everybody uses it for podcasting.
Yep.
But I also play guitar, and I also do vocal. So for me, it was not quite enough. I had tinkered with some other microphones, like never got my chance on a U87, but I tried a U47, which is another really nice microphone. And then I also was able to tinker with the TLM 103, which
the 103 is great. Yeah.
Another really good microphone. But having now the ability to switch between different modulations, these virtual microphones within the DLX really opened up a whole new mic cabinet to me that I never would have been able to afford. And it's like 95% of what you would get out of the real thing. They say. For me, I'll never know, because half of them I'd never be able to afford.
I've yet to find a person that, when their eyes are closed and they need to guess what microphone I sent them. It's, there's a lot of talk about that. It's like, I've been in this industry 36 years, and I love the 416. I love the U87, but I don't know if I can pin it down. And there's obvious things if they're using a dynamic mic, rather a full studio microphone. Yeah, obviously you can tell, but some of these, and especially with these digital, it brings like you said, the mic cabinet to a lot of people. And again, that is frightening maybe for some of these manufacturers that make mics, but yet again, there's going to be people like me that all of this stuff will be at my fingertips, but I'd rather have the real microphone.
Right.
It's like, I'm a big fan of Neumann. The very first time I was on a U87 when I was a teenager, it made me sound like Orson Welles. And I thought every microphone is different. Just because it works well for someone doesn't mean it's going to work well for your voice. So if someone's listening to this podcast, don't be thinking, I need to get a $3,000 or $4,000 U87. That's great, but it's not going to get you any more jobs than if you spent $250 off Amazon and just got a nice large diaphragm studio microphone, which you can get. Um, I used to say, do not get a USB. I hated them, but there has been a few microphones. I can't think offhand uh, which ones, but I saw a few recently, and it was just like I was surprised that USB has really come a long way. It was always for me an XLR. Okay, what do we have here?
This is my first mic, which is a CLU. It's a Behringer USB mic.
Okay,
So before I ever got into anything of anything, and I was just trying to record some tracks of me and
is
with
it
my
XLR
guitar.
or is it which or is it?
It's a USB. It's
Yeah,
almost like the same as a printer cable.
yep, exactly USB.
Yeah.
Well, so USB has come a long way. So I no longer say don't get a USB. That
And these are
again,
high dynamic. It's a large diaphragm microphone.
right?
Sounds pretty good. I mean, this one I think was 200 new. I think now they're probably right around $100.
That's
But
that's great.
you mentioned something that's on the money, which is, for all the really expensive microphones out there, there's a lot of knockoffs that imitate those microphones,
Yes.
and have like their own lines, if you will, but you never quite get the sound of the original, in my humble opinion, which is probably why you're stuck with the authentics that U80, that you said U67 or 80, or which one do you got?
So I've got two versions of the 87. I've got one that was uh it's called the U87 AI, which I don't think it has anything to do with AI, but that was probably made in probably 2014. And then I've got a vintage Neumann U87 that was probably made in 1967.
Oh.
Um yeah,
Do you
I'm
have
just a
that vintage one serviced, or is it just as good as, I mean, what do you have to do to maintain an old mic like that?
yeah, you do have to have it serviced. And I have had it cleaned. I've sent it to Germany to Neumann, and they've taken great care of it. And uh, they showed me where to find the serial number and all this history of the microphone. They kind of keep track of it. Let's see um if I can find I don't think I have a picture. Well, it wouldn't work anyway. I couldn't say. But anyway, I have a microphone. We were many years ago at Fox Studios in Los Angeles. A buddy and I had gone to an auction, and he had bought a microphone there that was he'd just picked up a microphone, or many years ago he'd picked up a microphone at a Fox, not maybe it was Fox, but he had picked up a microphone at an auction, and I thought, well, maybe I can do the same. We found ourselves at the Fox Studios, and they had this really weird looking microphone. But as I looked at it, I'd noticed the same microphone, and it was in dozens of pictures I'd seen with Mel Blanc. And it was not a Neumann. It's like, what is this? Well, the people selling it, at Fox, they're just trying to get rid of old stuff. It had yellow paint on it, for God's sakes.
Yeah.
And so I just thought, well, if nothing else, we'll have it gutted and use it as a bookend or, something to be on the shelf. It'll look nice. Well, another buddy of ours said that right there is they call it an RCA 10,001, or the technical name I think was an RCA KU3A. I think that was what it was called. But he said, that of course they were used a lot in the 40s, 30s, and 40s, and in Hollywood, in North Hollywood, there is the guy that worked for RCA. He still cleans those and engineers that maintains them. So take it there, and he probably can tell you about it. So that's what I did. I took it to this guy, and I thought, well, if nothing else, have him clean it out, gut it, and use it as a bookend. And he looked at it, and he showed us inside is stamped. It's not his initials, but he knew the guy that had made or helped make this one. They put their own initials inside the microphones at this time, and he cleaned it up to where it would work, and I use it to this day. And it's just it's a tube mic, so it has to warm up, and but it brings a colorization to the voice that none of the other microphones bring me, and it's just it's one of those, I don't think it was popular enough to probably ever be digitized. I don't think, the Beatles didn't use it. Um, and I don't, Frank Sinatra didn't sing on it, I don't think. Although he had some, Capitol Records still has the Neumann microphone that he
Do they?
sang on. In fact, they brought it out again for Whitney Houston. So she recorded all of her number one hits with that microphone.
Wow.
And I think Michael Bublé has been allowed to, what you think about it, the diaphragm inside the microphone has Frank Sinatra's DNA because, as you know, it's
Right.
a messy
Right.
business with microphones, with spitting that you may not see. So on that diaphragm is Whitney Houston and Michael Bublé and Frank Sinatra and Ray Charles and Nat King Cole, so the great voices of our history at
100 years
Capitol
down the road,
Records.
we'll
What's
combine that
that?
into one genome and have a baby, and
Yeah.
that'll be the
You have a
product of
baby
it.
and call him Michael Bublé. I'm kidding. It's just yeah, it's microphones. I'm a nerd when it comes to microphones. And
Me too.
going back to
Well,
these,
let me.
the prices where you're saying a lot of these people listening that might want to get into voiceover.
Yeah.
So many of the younger guys they're getting Pro Tools and they're getting these $1,000 DAWs. You don't have to. You can and I use it every now and then. There's a program called Audacity. It's a shareware program. It's free, and it absolutely. I've used it for professional work. You can record and save it as an MP3 or WAV and export it, and nobody has any idea that wasn't done on Pro Tools. Pro Tools would be great if you're having to record an orchestra or maybe use the different digitized musical libraries where you need 64 tracks. But as a voiceover, you only need one track. You don't really need to do sound effects. You don't need to add what they call needle drop music, unless you want to be a turnkey voiceover and offer that. You can, like me, I do have libraries of licensed music that I can offer my clients and say, I can layer it with a rug of music so that for you're on hold and it'll be licensed. So you don't have to worry about paying or getting shut down by CBS or whatever, whoever's going to do it,
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. I stepped on you. What were you going to say, Bo?
That's okay. I wanted to find out more about your mic box, or your mic locker rather. How many mics you got in total, do you think?
See, I've got two Neumanns. I've got this 416. I've got the KU3A. I've got the TLM 103 and 102, which I use for traveling. It's very smaller size capsule, and the 102 is dynamic. Not dynamic. I don't mean that's a bad word to use for microphones. It's not a dynamic microphone, but it's an incredible microphone. But it doesn't have the presence of that 103, and definitely not of the footprint of the 87. But so that's 7, and I have a Studio Project C1, which is incredible. Anybody needs, for $250, that comes the closest to sounding like my U87. Is called a Studio Projects an SP C1. It's a $250 microphone, and it is incredible. It is. I recommend that to a lot of my students that are wanting to get into voiceover or that are in voiceover, and they just want, sometimes switching gears, putting a different microphone on will give you a different flavor. And I do that. So I'm called on to do vintage voiceovers from the 1940s for, kind of like a newsreel. On this day in infamy, Franklin wrote, that type of thing. By using the RCA 10001, the dynamics, I don't need any processing. It just creates it automatically. Some of the engineers want, and others are just like, just use a regular microphone and we'll affect it up. But it does give a authenticity, because that's what the mic was used for, to create those newsreels back in the day. And it just gives that I don't know, that fiber, that texture that's hard to replicate with some of the digital stuff. You'd have to really play with the millions. There's a million.
I like to call it flavor, but yeah, I totally agree.
That's a good word.
Yeah. You talked about teaching and your students, a few different times, and I don't think I've ever asked you, how can students find you, and how are you still teaching? Where can they go
Yeah.
to find you?
Yeah. So, there are all types of coaches. Everybody seems to be coaching voiceover now. Um, I've always felt that it's important to, find a voiceover you can relate to. And it's a heck of a lot faster, especially for a newcomer, to get things going by hiring someone that's already doing what you want to do, find out their process. And, even as a child, I was put with some of the legends back in the day. The names probably will not mean anything to your listeners, but in my world, I had Percy Rodriguez and Don LaFontaine and Mel Blanc, so many of these great giants that I got to shadow and watch how did they do their process. And I think today it's important, the pedigree of whatever coach you're hiring is look at their body of work. They might be semi-retired now or fully retired, but look at what they've done or where they come from. Now, that being said, there are many casting directors and people that would make great coaches because that's from the other side. What are we looking for in a voiceover? But I think for true performance, it's great to learn from someone who is. So I do teach, but it's not like I'm a full-time teacher. I kind of take on students every now and then just because I am a full-time voiceover and I have to devote my attention to doing that. But on the side and when I have time, I love to teach and kind of help people get into, dip their foot in it. And maybe, I'm always honest. I have they can go to my website, voxguy, voxguy.com, voxguy.com, and email me from there and say that they're interested in learning, or maybe they're already an established voiceover and they just are looking for different tips on how to up their game, or however I can help. I would love to. But I that pedigree is important. I think is finding someone that really walks the walk and talks the talk literally,
Hmm.
as opposed to someone who, I've seen coaches and you look at their work record, they've only been in voiceovers 2 years and they're already coaches. They've got they have a full program where you subscribe and you have to buy this video and this MP3. And I'm not like that. I do just, we hook up a session. In fact, the very first time they set an appointment, I do a free 30-minute consultation with them where I just tell them whether or not I can help them or whether I think they ought to go to a different voiceover, because I don't want to give someone false hope that I personally can help them. If I don't feel that they're mic ready, or that I can help their whatever lane they're going to be in. Not to say that they go to a different coach, they might get something else, but just me personally, I know what I can do and what I can't do. And
Hmm.
so, just last week I had a gentleman who, typical, if I had a penny for this, what he says, hey, I've been in radio, for 30 years, and I've always been told I have a great voice for voiceover. And I want to say, actually, people in radio or from broadcasting, they're the hardest people to teach voiceover because they're trained to deliver that sound. They see a microphone and they immediately think I've got to perform. If you listen to I've got a really boring voice. Nobody really hires me for this voice for anything. I don't put on a voice. And even when I do perform, I do certain announcer voices, that are required of me. But for most of what I do, it's kind of a really boring sounding generic voice, but it's very human. It relates. The main thing is you're able to tell a story, and you get out of the way of whether that's selling something or actually an audiobook telling a story, because you don't want people sitting there thinking, who is this guy that's doing, what is his name? You want them to be caught up in the moment of selling you the brand new car, or telling you the story that Stephen King wrote on, an audiobook. You don't want them pulling back and losing that suspended belief in reality of now all of a sudden they're what kind of microphone is he using? They shouldn't be thinking those thoughts. They should be
Right.
enjoying just like a movie. We wouldn't pull back and go, well, is this 35 millimeter that they're shooting on, or Panavision? It's like, it
Right.
doesn't matter. Enjoy the movie. Who cares if it was shot on an iPhone? Does it look good? It looks good. Okay. So the same thing with the voiceover. And so anyone that reaches out to me, I'm happy to talk with them. And like I say, I have that free call where they just talk to me for 30 minutes and we get to know each other. And I honestly find out whether I can help them at their part of the game. And there's some that, like the guy that called me last week, he was so up in this radio thing. It's like we're going to have to really pare that ego down, because you speak with a voice, and in voiceover, the voice for a voiceover really doesn't matter. It matters about your intentionality. It matters about whether you can tell a story, your pauses, and just everything that you add to it. But at the end of the day, they mostly don't care about how you sound. Does it sound professional? Is my iambic pentameter, is it working? They don't care about that. They just want, because nobody on the street around us talks like that.
Right.
Now, sometimes they want that. Yeah. That's a classic announcer that I get cast in all the time. This is Loretta, and Loretta eats her lunch every day at 2 p.m. Loretta, are you happy? Sometimes they want that.
No, I'm
Right.
still hungry.
They want
Somebody
that
give me
very-
my sandwich. I need my sandwich.
Was your sandwich stored in a Ziploc storage bag?
No, just those
Loretta.
straight plastic edges.
Oh, poor Loretta. She's going straight to hell.
No, not hell. Sorry.
So, I mean, every now and then they want we're doing our own commercials. That's good. So every now and then they do want that gregarious or whatever. They want a character. But for the most part, most of my reads, corporate reads, they just want a narration voice, something similar and natural to the way I'm talking to you right now. Most of my ads it's really a non-voiceover voice, just telling you about a pediatrics clinic that's in Rhode Island, or whatever I'm doing.
You get that sultry, smooth, silky voice there, buddy.
Well, I bought it
Smooth
at
and silky.
Walmart.
I miss Kmart because they used to make those blue light special jokes all the time.
Well, you know what's funny that you say that? I did voiceovers for their in-store announcements, or what they call overhead announcements. And Bo, I'm ashamed to say, I don't have them in here, but I have. I was listening to one the other day. I have thousands of reel-to-reel and cassettes of Kmart music. And I go, literally the script was, hello, Kmart shoppers, save $5 right now in boys print shirts right now at Kmart. Be looking for the blue light. Have a great day. And thank you for shopping your Kmart. And a lot of times they would have us do, we'd have to specifically record, thank you for shopping your Farmington, New Mexico, as if you were in New Mexico and you had to be reminded Farmington is in New Mexico.
Right.
Or, thank you for shopping your Albuquerque, New Mexico Kmart store. Well, you're in Albuquerque, you're in New Mexico. It's like, but anyway, that's what we did. But the guy that originally had done them, I never learned his name. But as a child, you and I growing up with blue light specials, I didn't care about the store. Who is this magical voice?
Mm-hmm.
And so I have, just like I say, not 1,000, but I have hundreds of these cassettes with that guy on there. And just remember beautiful music. Just, they would take the latest by Led Zeppelin and all of a sudden turn it into something my parents would listen to. And it's like, oh, it's like what you would fall asleep to, but it's Led Zeppelin. But
Connor,
it's music.
So let me ask you, have you bumped into anybody else that has a tape collection like yourself with commercials?
A few times that I talk with people who are audiophiles who love audio and all things audio, and I'll do come across these people that are interested in not really commercials. I've yet to really meet someone who is music and albums, of course, they have it on vinyl. We have every one of the Moody Blues albums, and a few guys I meet are very big on air checks. So they have some of the biggest and greatest radio stations in our history. Thank God those are preserved. They have them on reel to reel. And in case someone's listening and doesn't know what an air check is, as a DJ's on the air, they roll tape at the time. And every time they open the microphone or play a promo or something like that, this thing would record, and they could play it back with the program director, and he or she would be able to tell them, this is something you need to improve or work on. And that's how they would improve their career. Well, it got to be that people started swapping these air checks, or if you were in town somewhere, you could go, you'd have a recorder and you record local radio stations and you would do your own air checks. And so there's some great, it's like capturing a moment in 1972 or, whenever it was done. And they're fantastic to hear what music was playing, the way the guy was talking, what promos were on. But I haven't really met anyone like me that's fascinated by jingles and commercials. And I think it was unique, at the time I was growing up, I was constantly trying to find out, who is this voice? Because I was like trying to fill my world. These are my celebrity people, but I need to know their names. I need to know, as a 14-year-old, I need to know those are real people. So I'd ask my agent, who's doing the voice for the Tupperware commercial? Well, she had no idea, but she told me how I could find out. And she had this directory that, she subscribed to, this trade magazine called Advertising Age. And it would talk about the latest campaigns, but it would also list the advertising agency that had created the spots. So I would go through her trade magazines. Let's say that there was a guy who, God, probably for like 10 years, I was trying to find out who this guy is. I was in love with his voice. Nobody knew. There was no internet. You couldn't just Google who is the voice of, and even if you do that today, odds are you're not going to find out. They don't normally give credits for the voiceover in the Geico spot unless it's a celebrity. If it's just Connor Quinn, it's usually not going to say that. So back then, we'd go through Advertising Age, and I was constantly looking for this guy. We'd hear him, he would pop up. He was on a Time commercial, subscribe to Time. He was on a Tupperware commercial. He did Glad bags. He did on and on and on. Nobody seemed to know who he was. That was in LA. So that told me he's probably an East Coast talent. And a lot of those, they didn't know each other really. Again, no internet, so they didn't really connect. Finally, I heard him on this Tupperware commercial, and I had been writing companies trying to figure out who he is. I look up Advertising Age, and there's Tupperware. Oh, and it was created by Ted Bates Worldwide was the name of the ad agency. So I looked them up in the other directory. Here's the Age on Avenue of the Americas in New York City. So I wrote a very formal letter about the Tupperware commercial and why I want to know. And they sent me a nice letter back saying that information is contractually restricted. It was like, oh my God, what am I doing? And so finally a commercial, I can't remember what it came up. I did the same process, and oh, that's great. The area I'm in now has a tornado apparently. So that's good. Bo, it was wonderful knowing you. And
say hi to Toto and Andy M.
right. No, we're under a watch anyway, so it just popped up. But anyway, so this other company had a commercial with his voiceover. I did the same thing, wrote to the ad agency, and they said for the first time, they finally said, well, the such and such company is the production company, and they're the ones who did the casting. Here is their address, write them. So a letter went out to, it was a full letter typing, wrote them. They wrote back and they said the guy that was doing that, let's say Tupperware, whatever commercial, his name is Ralph Bell. A real boring type of name. Well, I told my agent that. She said, oh my God, I should have. Ralph Bell he's a long history of a radio drama professional actor, and he's done stage. He's like Eli Wallach, very much of the New York set. Well, being an agent, she had a directory of all actors and actresses and who is their representative. She looked him up. He was with a guy named Charles H. Stern, or no, Don Buchwald. We got to be accurate here. Don Buchwald and Associates in New York. That was his agent. So I wrote a letter to Don Buchwald and said, I love Ralph Bell's voice. I've been looking for him for 10 years. And it must have sounded like a really pathetic letter now that I think about it from a 14-year-old kid. But bless his heart, Ralph Bell, they passed the letter on to him. He wrote me back because I had so many damn questions. He wrote me back handwritten 3 or 4 pages. And he was joking. He said, my goodness, Connor, if I answered every one of your questions, the postage for this letter would cost $1,085. So I'm gonna take a crack at some of your questions, and I'll give you. This was amazing. I'll give you my phone number, and maybe we can talk one. Back then long distance was expensive. He said maybe we can talk directly. Well, I got the letter. I about fainted. He's like, I've never had a fan from that. I said I was from New Mexico. I was born there. So I used that in the letter saying I'm from New Mexico. Well, he's like, I've never had a fan from as far away as New Mexico. I'm sure he had as far away as New Mexico. And especially a fan of my commercial work. I'm a regular actor. I've done film and television, and it's interesting that you picked up on my commercials, and I'm flattered, but they're just, I do these between gigs to pay the bills. But I'm flattered that you find them entertaining. And he also sent me reel to reel, and I have it. I don't know if I have it right here, but I have the reel to reel still of his voiceover, his voiceover demo. And, it's 3 minutes of the best of Ralph Bell. And I cherish it. It's just, absolutely. It's like God himself left me something,
Let me ask you this. Has anybody done like the history of voiceover? Like, have any of you guys ever just got together and started reminiscing about stories of the greats that you interacted with? I mean, you've told me several on this show alone, but I mean, is there anything that people have put together like that thus far?
There's a few that that have done that. For example, I'm trying to think of his name now. Scott. Oh my gosh, they're going to kill me. He's a voiceover talent in Australia. In fact, he's authorized by, I'm going to look this up as we talk. I'm going to cheat. He is the Australian voice authorized by Warner Brothers of many of their Warner Brothers characters with kind of a little bit of a Australian accent. Keith Scott, my bad. His name is Keith Scott, and he came before I did, a little bit older than I am. And he is from Sydney. He had written, because he was obsessed with the Jay Ward cartoons, which would have been Bullwinkle and all the commercials back then of Quakes and Quangaroos and Tom Slick and George of the Jungle. All of those are Jay Ward productions. And they consisted of Dawes Butler, June Foray, Bill Scott. Bill Scott was the voice of Bullwinkle, and the great Paul Frees, who that right there is like the grand mothership of voiceovers is Paul Frees. Paul was the original voice of the Pillsbury Doughboy. He was Toucan Sam. He was Boris Badenoff. He was the voice of the Haunted Mansion in Disneyland. When you go through Disneyland and the Pirates of the Caribbean, he's the voice of half of those pirates. They actually used his likeness to make most of the pirate figures in there, but they put beards on them, and he was just an incredible guy. So Keith Scott had written a book. I can't think of the name of it, but he had written a book because he had done so much research. He was like I was. He was an absolute fanatic because, the word fan is short for fanatic. He was fanatical about Bill Scott and Jay Ward and all these people. So he had written a book about June Foray and about those people at that time. That's a very comprehensive book. He is best friends with a mutual friend of mine. That's how I heard of Keith. I've never met him, but Corey Burton, who was one of my great mentors. And Corey has been used by Disney they've used his voice for so many years, doing not only Star Wars, but actual Disney voice. He's been many voices in Disneyland, Disney World. And we need to get him to write a book, because I can take any strange audio to him and say, who is this? And he'll, oh, well, yes, that is the great Paul, or, whoever it is. He's just a library of information, a plethora. Boy, that's the first time in 2023 I've used the word plethora. But anyway, go ahead. I'm sorry, but what'd you say?
Does he ever podcast?
No, he does many great interviews. That's very rare, because his schedule is so busy, so he doesn't do a lot. And he should have people would listen to that podcast, because
you two are friends though, right?
We are. Yeah, we are.
Maybe I'll plant this as a bug. See if maybe he just want to do a Zoom with you, and we can have a chill discussion or something,
that would be fun.
And just talk about fun stuff.
Yeah, because and I would have to, I'd become definitely the student, because his stories would out trump my stories, without a doubt.
But who could bring a better story out of him than you? Because you're his friend, the history, that's why I think that dynamic
yeah, and I could say,
so
remember
well.
The one story you told me, and bring, there's so many, God, there's so many stories that are just going to die otherwise. We don't.
I'm so glad that you recognize that, because I do. That's why I think capturing that is important. Especially for me. I mean, I'll be 50 next year. So
welcome to the club. I'm 52.
Congratulations. You look great. So, it's for me, these are my heroes when I was a kid, my cartoon heroes or other things. And I don't think that they got the recognition that they deserved. Everybody recognizes.
I don't either. In fact, I've got the only picture I have in here. I don't know if you can see it. It's
Yeah, you showed me that last time too.
Oh, did I show it to you? Yeah, with Dawes Butler.
That's your hero. What's his name again?
Yeah, he's incredible.
What's his name again?
In case someone didn't see that, let me show it to you. That's Mr. Butler there.
Yeah.
Dawes Butler. Well, I mean, he was the voice of Yogi Berry, Huckleberry Hound, Elroy Jetson, Barney Rubble, on and on and on. Yeah. Watch any old cartoon, Hanna-Barbera, and you'll see the name either Don Messick or Dawes Butler, without a doubt.
Buddy, let me just toss that to you. If anybody can maybe bring some of that together, I could see it being you. Are you interested in that? I could easily moderate. I can edit. I can do all the heavy lifting. All people have to do is sit down and have a good.
Yeah, the key would be to be able to get him to do it. Yeah, if he would do it, that'd be terrific. Like I say, his schedule, my schedule is hectic. His is even worse, but it's like if he could find any amount of time to.
Well, these Zoom things are so easy and great, so.
Yeah. I mean, this is great that we're able to do. It's amazing that we have this technology to,
it really is.
This is Star Trek. Literally, they would talk to the head Klingon with a video conference call before there was video,
Oh, yeah. God.
We will not really move, Vortec.
It's my bad Klingon impersonation.
Right, and I don't know what voice I'm all of a sudden an announcer, Look up
I don't
in the
have
sky.
To be number
it's
one,
Superman.
but I don't want to be number two. No.
Right? Yeah, don't wear a red shirt. That's what you should learn. If you were an actor back then and they handed you a red shirt, walk away. But actually, I'd have the honor.
I'll die for you guys. 12. I don't care.
Right, kill me. Get in a fight with Bill Shatner or maybe his girlfriend.
Who do you think the most famous extra was that died on Star Trek that ended up going on to something bigger? I know there had to be at least one or two.
Oh, now mine. Yeah, I mean, it's just like picking. How many stars were on Twilight Zone, including Bill Shatner. With the classic monster on the wing. There's so many in my world. There's one guy that stands out above all the rest. And again, to your listeners, they're like, who? So there was all these names and famous faces. The one guy that stands out to me, he was a famous face of that era. He was in a lot of film and television and played wonderful characters, villains and good guys. The guy that he was playing on Star Trek was, of course, was a villain. He had, wore a red shirt, I believe, and he took over the Enterprise. And he was an actor by the name of Percy Rodriguez, and he was in the movie the miniseries Roots. He was the original trailer voice for Jaws. Just when you thought it was safe to go back in the water, just a haunting voice. So he took over the Enterprise. I can't remember how. I'm lose my Trekkie card for that, but he was as far as I know, he was born in Canada. He had the name Percy Rodriguez, and he was a black actor, very distinguished black actor who was in so many iconic roles. Just I can't even name them. If people Google his face, they'll know it if they're from that era. He was one of the guys that I was fortunate enough to shadow as a child or a kid, 12 or 14. Percy was classically trained, in Shakespeare, on the likes of like Patrick Stewart, and he spoke like this most of the time. He was very fastidious, never cussed. All right, Connor, well, let's head to the car. It was like a TV series. Very, very calm. And he was one of the few guys I knew that wore an ascot. I mean, we're just doing voiceovers in the hot LA sun, and we're going back in those days, we would drive from studio to studio. He was dressed to the nine and had an ascot and made it work, All right, let's go. All right. There's no need to eat lunch, Connor. We don't want that in our system. We'll have water. Okay. I'm a 12-year-old. Let's get a cheeseburgers or something. So anyway, at that time, he was the voice of Coca-Cola. And they were doing a reunion of a classic commercial they had done in the 70s called I'd Like to Buy the World a Coke. It was based on the song I'd Like to Teach the World to Sing. Those singers that they had used, the actors in the film, they were on a hilltop in Italy, and it was shot for Christmas, probably like 1975 or whatever. So I guess it was a 10-year reunion, whatever. They wanted to come back. And if I remember right, so it was at the Paramount Studios. Coca-Cola had bought Paramount, and Coca-Cola did commercials unlike anybody else. So you would have everybody. We're on a soundstage, literally a soundstage where they've shot films. They have like 100-piece orchestra in there. In an isolation booth are Percy and I for the voiceover. They had the Hilltop Singers. That was the then kids who were gathered on the hilltop to sing. They're in another isolation booth. The conductor, the creative director, all these people were down below. And then to top it all off was a huge 70 millimeter aspect screen where they were going to play the commercial with what they called SMPTE time code that ran on the bottom so they would know when to edit. All of this, so many moving parts. This is not the way the industry works. I record my things. They record the jingle singers. They record the jingle orchestra by itself, but not Coca-Cola. We do it all at one time. And there is something to be said about having that synergy of having the orchestra, not a band, an orchestra, and having whatever 15, 20 jingle singer session. They're session musicians, they're session singers, but still, it's unbelievable that so many people are there. So here we are with this 10-year reunion, whatever, of I'd Like to Buy the World a Coke. Percy Rodriguez had the very last tagline, and they keyed up the orchestra. There was someone needed to tighten up their strings or whatever, so they took it again. Something was wrong with one of the, let's say the fifth chair flute. The conductor didn't like that, so they went back. And I thought, gee, oh my God, Jesus, we're going to be here all day with this stuff. So take three, somewhere around there. And I thought, the singers missed one line, and they got to sing the whole damn thing. I mean, I'd like to buy the world a Coke and perfect harmony, blah, blah, blah. If they mess up one time, we're dead. We're going to be here till midnight, and it's 9 a.m. Plus we have Percy, having to say his thing. So They did the music, they got that right, and now let's go. So the music started, and then he cued the singers. They started with a little, the nice little jingle, and it goes through this beautiful, and they're showing all these montage of wonderful Coca-Cola products and commercials over the years, and all the celebrities that have endorsed them, and landing on that helicopter shot of going around the hilltop in Italy, and then merged to some stuff they'd shot with these same singers now 10 years later on that same hill, and what they look like now, holding a candle in the shape of a Christmas tree, singing the song. So, and then Percy Rodriguez would come in on the very end, and all he said was, Coca-Cola Classic, you can't beat the real thing. That's all he said. I get chills now. He had chill. I got chills from the orchestra and Percy and the oh my God, it was just overwhelming. Well, they didn't like that. That was, they told Percy, well, you're 2/100ths of a second off on the end. Can you shave that off? And Percy's, without any yes, I can. All right, well, cool. Then he had a little note for the violinist, and then the singers, you're coming in a little bit too early. Let's stick to watch the screen. Okay, let's go. Take 3. Oh my God. So everything was going along, and Percy, Coca-Cola Classic, you can't beat the real thing. 0, 0, 0, 0 on the screen of love. And I just, how is this humanly? I mean, this was long before computers became an everyday object. These people were used to performing now. You have a theater full of people, you don't mess up. You have to, you're on a high wire and you don't fall. And when the guy says you need to have it in 0.000, he did. He landed that plane with the orchestra, with the jingle singers. It was an incredible scene, man. It was just like, so to me, boy, that was a long answer to your question. Percy Rodriguez is, without a doubt, to me, my favorite villain. That he went in to do so many things that a lot of people don't even know about. The classic, just when you thought it was safe to get back in the water. And Percy had a very sing-songing way. That's why his voice was famous. He was the voice of Kenny Shoes. Kenny Shoes, we only sell the right shoe. So he'd always have the da-da-da, da-da-da-da, Coca-Cola Classic, you can't beat the real thing. So he had, and that's the way I learned voices, like Dana Carvey, is you learn the rhythm, da-da-da-da, da-da, how are they speaking? What's the rhythm? And he had a very staccato way of, punctuating. And just at that time in the I still am asked, there's nobody to do a Percy Rodriguez. So every now and then they ask me to do can you do a Percy read for such and such? It's my pleasure, especially a lot of horror trailers. They love his voice, that Jaws voice. He was the voice of all the damn Jason film. Jason Goes to Hell begins Friday, November 23rd at a theater near you. It's just that voice lives in my head, probably till the day I die, probably. But so who's your favorite star?
I grew up with Bugs Bunny, and all of those characters were the voices that I grew up with. And so, right. Obviously Mel was a huge part of that. And because I'm not as versed to the other actors, I can't name them off, which is another reason why I think it's important for us to, do something like what we talked about a little bit ago about having, some of these greats on and just, I'll shut up and just let you guys talk.
I will too. Yeah. If we get them on, it's like,
yeah. And I'll just edit it, so that it's producible and right. The way it goes. I think it's just amazing to keep the stories alive.
It is, back when I was younger, that's what we were taught, is that voices were, you're there to be heard, not seen, and get out of the way of don't talk. It's just not
one of my favorite characters, which I think you've actually done, was Optimus Prime. I was a big Transformer junkie when I was a kid, which obviously you didn't. Yeah, but he had such a voice to him, which I think's really iconic. I'm not sure what other characters he's done,
Oh,
but I usually could pick him out when I hear him.
yeah, I mean, he's done so many other things. I'm trying to look at the who I worked with him. I worked with him on the Gummy Bears, and I'm trying to remember the actual name of the character that he. Yeah, people are probably already ahead of me there. I can't remember the name of the character, but that's when I first met Peter Cullen, was doing Gummy Bears, along with Corey Burton, who I'd mentioned. He, my role in that was just an observer, just to, again, it was a great Disney tradition of, you put all of the actors in a horseshoe formation and you record them. They all had, at that time, we had a Sennheiser MD421 microphones, which I was like underwhelmed. It's like, that is such a common, mainly that's an instrumental. That's something you use as an instrument in a, a recorded bass guitar, or, especially in that era, it was a very common microphone. So I thought Disney was kind of weird in the way that they hired out their studios for very high priced clients so they would make money. They themselves, for stuff like the Gummy Bears, they would go to third party recording studios and do the recordings there. So we were not at the Disney studios recording them. We were at B&B Sound in Burbank, which was also they had also recorded Fievel Goes West and American Tail, and they'd also done Transformers the movie there, and they also did Who Framed Roger Rabbit. So all of that audio was done at B&B Studios, a legendary studio. It's just like you said, there's so much history. It's like, I don't know. I mean, even as a kid, most people didn't know what a voiceover was or cared. So part of me, it's like, I don't know how many people would be interested in that, but it seems like now more than ever, people are interested, because I used to have to explain what a voiceover was. A voiceover what? So I would just say, well, I'm an actor. That just, okay, you're an actor. Nowadays, if you say a voiceover, they pretty much always know what that is. And, what have you been in that I've heard you on?
Right.
People know. It's
and
amazing how it's changed. So now more than ever, there's more of an audience for all things voiceover, whether they want to get into it or they're fans of it or both. It's a good
you
time.
never know what you have until it's gone, and I feel like that's the precipice that we're at with some of these original voice actors. And so
I agree, and we've lost so many. We can't get those. June Foray, I kicked myself that we didn't record her. There was a few recordings made, but not like not what should have been. The great Paul Frees, I had many, I've got him on tape. I'm sure he knew, but I didn't tell him that he was being recorded. But yeah, I had reel to reel rolling in the background, and I had a phone patch, and so I was recording our conversation. So little 12-year-old me asking him dumb questions.
You really need to start opening a museum or something with some of the stuff that you've collected. Because when you go, do you have plans for it? I mean, what are you going to do with all this?
No, I've never even thought about that, because it's like,
you have such a, well, I think that that your understanding and awareness of the importance of it is understated, because it's hard to see. It's always easier to see from the outside in than when you're swimming in the ABC soup, is what I like to say. And because you've been swimming in the ABC soup for so long, a lot of these things they're special and you know it, but maybe they're more desensitized, or or how important they actually truly are might be lost a little bit, because you've lived this rather than
right.
people on the outside listening to it. In my personal opinion, I think this is something that someone, especially in broadcasts, museums, or anything along that line, would love to talk with you and get their hands on. And maybe if they hear this podcast, they're like, well, I'm going to contact Connor because we have a great home for it. Because not only
I
is
think it is important. I think, going back to Keith Scott, there's a great story, him and Corey. I don't know the exact story, but I'm sure it's I'm sure there's elements that are rough, that I don't know, I'm not privy to. But so the Rocky and Bullwinkle show was produced in Los Angeles by J. Ward Productions. Bill Scott was the voice of Bullwinkle, June Foray, Paul Frees, all these wonderful actors were on there. Well, again, Corey Burton and Keith were very infatuated with that. And some way or another, I don't want to go into what I think, but some way or another, they, as younger guys, came into being. They had the original reel-to-reels audio that was left, in the studio when it went defunct, and it became an art gallery. And some way or another, Keith, I think, had gotten them or knew of them, and they shared some of the audio with me, and I have some of it on tape. And what it is you have to remember, so in 1964 or whenever these were produced, these voiceovers, they didn't really think, okay, the recording is going on, but the recorder may be going on early, so you get just bits and pieces of their conversation before we're playing characters. So you would hear what's his name, William, the big voice guy. He was the voice in Gunsmoke, Bill Conrad, William Conrad. He was the narrator. So you had literally a huge actor. And so you would hear Bill Conrad. He's talking about a guy named Jim, and they went to lunch. And now you have to remember, they had no idea that they're just interspersed conversations are being recorded, because it was just by accident that they were picked up. It wasn't like we're recording this for someone to hear. It was never that intention. So it would just, like, they would start rolling tape in, let them kind of get into their positions, and okay, now we're gonna begin. Well, not to interrupt them, he was telling a story about this guy named Jim. And they're going on, oh, Jim's a lovely fellow, and da-da-da. And Paul Frees, well, I had lunch with Jim and his wife 2 weeks ago, and da-da-da. All this stuff going back and forth. Come to find out, the guy they're talking about is Jimmy Stewart. But they know him just as James, it's Jim. It's they had all these little pet names that you have to kind of decipher, who the hell are they talking about? But all these people are old Hollywood. So of course they socialized with a lot of these older actors. So they were talking about them and their wife were bridge partners with George Burns. And it's like, what? I mean, a side that you never saw. So those were on the audio. And then meanwhile, okay, Rocky the Flying Squirrel, episode 54, take one, action. And, I am, Bullwinkle Booth, and they just go right into it. And most of them, they were used from old radio. So they would just go episode after episode, maybe one after another, with no retakes. They were so good on timing, and they were used to performing and getting it right the first time, that they didn't need to go back. Bill Scott, who was directing it, would probably say, yeah, let's go back, Boris, pick up line 11A and do more of an evil laugh on that. And June, we want, fascinating stuff to hear these. So if the rumor is right, I think Keith, he had access to these. He had let June know that he had access to them, or he had them. And June wanted them donated to the Museum of Broadcasting or whatever in Los Angeles. And, he could keep the copies or whatever, but make sure that it goes to the museum. I don't know if that ever happened, or I don't even know if that's true, but the few that I've heard are absolutely incredible. Let's see if I have, this is, they had photocopied the back of the reel-to-reel, so you can see the marks of what they're, let's see.
Mm-hmm.
And these were cassettes that were, we made a cassette of the reel-to-reels. And I still, as you can tell, I listen to them all the time for inspiration, because between gigs, between takes, uh, you hear them create voices, you hear them practice. Uh, they do silly name calling and internal, not really drama, but just playfulness. They all loved each other, so it's like um, it's just funny. It's wholesome now to go back and listen to. The cutest thing on there was Bill Scott. He came in a foul mood, and they're like, "Oh, Bill, what's wrong?" Oh, kids, you have to remember what year it was, like in the '60s. Oh, kids these days, our society's going straight to hell. And they're like, what happened? And he goes, "Oh, Jesus, I was watching your hit parade, and these people, the mamas and something, the mamas or the papas. Oh my God, our society, man, right down the drain. You cannot get more, you cannot get any more of a sweeter voice of the mamas and papas." So, but to their ears, who are listening to Glenn Miller, to those Frank Sinatra, to those crooners, I'm sure that it was an attack on the ears to hear the mamas and papas say California Dreaming or whatever they were singing. And
Right.
it's just funny how it wasn't manufactured, because he didn't know that they were recording at that moment. So it was a natural part of the process of them talking about their day. It was it was crowded on Sepulveda Boulevard or on Melrose, or it's just a peek inside. And so thank God those people, unbeknownst, left that to us. And I hope that it is in a museum. I hope to, it someday goes on an exhibit, or just like, the characters I worked with as a child on Sesame Street, the icons of Bert and Ernie. I'm fortunate to have a real Ernie, that was
Oh, wow.
used on television. And it's just, I know the Smithsonian, I know they have Bert and Ernie, and in the Puppetry Museum in Georgia, which is like the national shrine for puppeteers, they have Jim Henson's collection. So his daughter, Cheryl, has loaned them, many pieces from the Jim Henson workshop, including Bert and Ernie and an original Kermit and a Big Bird. It's just, I think it's awesome that it gives people a chance to, something that you grew up with on television. I guarantee when you see them, unfortunately, they're behind glass, so you can't touch them, but they're not like what you think they are. It's just a different texture. Um, I was totally surprised, even as a child. I think, feeling it's kind of like feeling a cat's tongue or a caterpillar. It's like, it looks one way but feels differently.
Mm.
It's just different. So I think it's important that, not just in what my little world of voiceover, but so much in the world in general, it's so cool that they have the chair that Abraham Lincoln was sitting in at Ford's Theater. That just blows me away, that there it is. That is the chair he was sitting in. The car that, I don't know why I'm doing assassinations, but the car Kennedy was killed in. But beyond that, just some of these
Iconic
several
moments in
months ago.
history. Yeah.
Yeah. So several months ago, we were in Houston. We went to the George Bush Presidential Museum. I've never been to the White House, but they have, I think, a scale model of his Oval Office at the time. It just absolutely, I was thrilled. There's the desk. It looks like we're on a film set. It looks that you can sit in the couch that his press secretary would sit in. There's the sculptures. There's real books. You can sit at his executive desk, which was the classic. I forget the desk that so many presidents have used, where John peered out beneath President Kennedy's feet. They took that classic time photo. But anyway, so I'm like you. I think that we have to lock down all these while we can.
Yeah. Well, hey, let me plant a couple more seeds. I have a dinner date that she called about 10 minutes ago. I think that this is something that you and I should tackle. I think, you could find out who might be interested. Obviously we all, do your thing. But if you guys are interested in me helping at all and moderating it, then I'll also, put it all together and do the back end work for it too. But I would love to be able to help to preserve some of the history that, is being lost and has
It
already been
is,
lost.
minute by minute. Yeah, we're losing in all forms
So,
of what we're doing, all forms of media.
you know, I I think that would be a good thing for us to do
I
if you're
agree.
interested.
Yeah.
Um, well, how about this? Let's reconvene. Let's see. Let me just take a look at my calendar. Would you pop yours up and we'll schedule our next rendezvous. So let's see. After the 4th of July week, I will be back. So like any time after Sunday the 9th, it's good for me.
So let's see, today's Thursday. How about the 13th? Lucky number 13.
That sounds wonderful. Should we do 5 o'clock again? Does that work for you?
Yeah, 5 p.m. is great.
Okay. And I added that in. You should, I think, get just like you did last time, the notification. If
Yeah, that
not,
worked out.
else.
Yeah, that worked
Perfect.
out perfectly. So do you do the your Zoom account, is it the premium, the paid account?
Yeah.
It is. Okay, great.
Otherwise they're always cut it, like I think you said 30 minutes or whatever.
30 minutes, right? Yeah, I think
Um,
that's right.
yeah, and there's a lot of other, I guess, premium benefits that you get with having a premium account, but I use it also for my other jobs, so it works out well. But yeah,
It's funny.
um,
It's how many people in broadcasting for voiceovers use Zoom.
yeah,
A lot of times I don't have, most of the time I don't have the camera on, but it's, uh, they call because it's good quality, so they can listen into me recording as we're doing it. They're hearing what is he recording, and they can direct me one way or the other. So Zoom is an incredible. It's absolutely incredible. Just
yeah, I
amazing.
agree. The big thing is the bit rate that we're able to transfer. Kind of like you said before, it used to be like Connect something or other for
Yeah,
old school studio. But now with this DSL, with their upload and download rates, we're getting pretty good, almost real time, very little delay.
yeah.
So
I remember that used to be the voice over IP was, that was the big thing about how AT&T, what they could bring you. Today it's just like, you know, it's just like the newscast watching Lester Holt on NBC in 4K. He hopefully has no smudges or blushes that day, because you're going to see it. You're going to see
right.
warts and all. Whatever is happening in 4K, you're seeing people as they truly are.
Or you see the makeup line because it's not blended quite right, or yeah, yeah,
We're right, because we're used to the broadcast standard of not being what it is.
right,
Yeah. So when you go back and watch those old Dean Martin specials or stuff, you pick up on a lot more. You see a lot more, just like they enhanced Wizard of Oz to 4K, and it's just like now I'm there. Oh my God, there's stuff in the background. It's almost like you were
right.
right there when they shot it. It's amazing.
It really is.
Technology it's scary, but it's also crazy good of how it can bring those things back.
We might be old, but at least we're young enough to still experience and use some of this stuff. So I'm excited
Right.
to where
Yeah.
this is leading.
Exactly. Yep. Absolutely.
I appreciate you. I will talk to you soon. If you want to, you can, I call it flicking. You can email me or whatever if you have ideas or vice versa, and we can try to, you know, come up with how we want to tackle the next episode. But
Yeah.
I enjoy.
Absolutely. That's going to be a mountain to climb, is trying to get them on board, because most of them are unlike me. They don't want to necessarily talk about themselves as individuals. So to get
Mhm.
that out of the way and to talk, that's going to take probably some doing to getting, you know, how important it is to tell these stories, because they're not our stories.
Right.
They're stories that
Yeah.
have been handed down to us, and where the sharekeeper is. It's just like if you have a prop from, um, anything. It's like you're just the current holder of that prop. Hopefully
Yep.
you'll go in, just like me with my collection of Muppets or whatever. It's like I'm just the caretaker of them now. And I hope to God whoever gets them next, he or she, treats them tenderly and, is like takes well good care of them because they weren't meant to last forever. Last thing before we go here, I've got, I did McDonald commercials for most of my childhood. I was in hundreds of those damn, commercials where we had flying milkshakes and hamburgers that talked. And so I was given a hamburger puppet that was created by, they were the same people that worked for Sid and Marty Krofft, and they created HR Puffin stuff. That's why Mayor McCheese and all, they look just like they came off of HR Puffin stuff. And there was a big lawsuit from Sid and Marty Krofft against Leo Burnett agency in Chicago that had, contracted this stuff out. Anyway, they went on, they did these commercials. And so we had a lot of these talking hamburger stuff. Well, I had a hamburger, one of the talking hamburger puppets, and I still have it. And the next podcast, if you remind me, I'll show a picture. It's, I've got it preserved in a box. It's just in crumbles. His eyeballs are left, and you can see sesame seeds that were on the bond of his, for his mouth, but it's not in good shape. Though they were meant to just be used and thrown away. And never did any of them think that someone's going to hang on to it for 50 years like I have. But, I'll keep, if nothing else, I'll keep the eyes. If it all goes south, those eyes will at least last my lifetime. So I'm going to hang on to them as long as possible. But anyway, so last question, what are you going to have for dinner? That's the ultimate question. What are you doing for dinner?
So we have a restaurant called Reps here in town, and they do steak. I usually like their salad bar and either steak and lobster if I'm feeling risky, or just they have a water aged steaks, so they're different than dry aged.
I don't know. I have never had this.
You can cut it with a fork. It's super yummy. Yeah, and their salad bar is amazing. I don't know if you're into salad bars, but
love salad bar. For a big guy, I love salad bars.
Yeah, me too.
I don't want to
judge me. Get out of my way.
So there's a restaurant. It's a chain. I don't really want to say its name, on the podcast, but there is a chain, and they happen to have a location near me. People I think that are familiar with it probably will know exactly what I'm talking about. But their steaks, oh my God. I don't care about their burgers or anything else they have in the place, but their steaks, what it is it's basically aged, I guess, or whatever, with Starbucks coffee. And I know that sounds absolutely stupid, but it is. When you eat it, you don't say, oh my God, is this coffee? I would have never known. I ate there for a year before one of the general managers told me, oh yeah, we put that in. If you read the menu, it says used Starbucks cappuccino, whatever the hell they're doing. But that's, I mean, who would have ever thought? I would have never thought, well, let's put it in coffee. That'll be good. How about Coca-Cola?
Have you ever heard of Chart House?
What is it called?
Chart House, CHART.
No.
House. It's a chain, and it's 5-star. They have some really famous chefs. I went to one that's outside of Denver a couple times, and then one that's in Philly. And I have never had anything quite as good. They didn't have Wagyu beef, at least not that I ordered. And definitely something I'd like to try. They always talk about Wagyu and how great it is, and I can't say because I've never had it, but I like these. I love steak, so I wouldn't mind trying it, especially since people have
here in Oklahoma. There's a legendary steak place. It's like if you go through Oklahoma, you have to go there because Oklahoma City itself is known for a history of steaks and producing cattle. And so there's a part of Oklahoma that they call the Stockyards or Stockyard City. It's part of Oklahoma. And it's just this historic kind of like a Main Street looking place. And there is a restaurant that has been located there for I don't know how long. And it's called Cattleman's. And right near there was the stockyards where they did the auctions for the cattle that would go out across the United States for restaurants and what have you. Well, the first George Bush ate there, and whatever he had, the steak he had, they call it the presidential, whatever, I forget how many ounces it was, but it's an incredible place. It's where you would go if you were on a prom date or a first date, or I go there for any reason. Actually, I just love, it's a local, and according to their lore, and I remember this as a child visiting there, because my family is from Oklahoma City. So their lore is that restaurant was won in a hand of poker. So the guy that owned it, he was getting low on his money or whatever, so he put up the lease of the restaurant in the poker game, and the other guy won it and has owned it since, or his family. And so I don't know if that's true, but it's a damn good story either way.
That is a great story.
Yeah, it's just stands up there with the Jesse James stories or whatever. Well, so go enjoy your steak. That must be nice. That's going to be incredible.
Oh, it's been a minute since I had a steak, probably like more than a minute, like a month and a half since I had a really good steak. So I'm kind of looking forward to this. But
you deserve it.
I appreciate that. You have yourself a great evening.
You too,
as always, I enjoyed spending time with you and look forward to doing it again.
Likewise. So thank you, brother. Bye-bye.
Yeah, you too. Bye.
This has been Digital Voices with Bo Tiffany, exploring deep stories from real-life guests with real-life experiences, providing insight to our listeners with every story. Stay up to date on future podcasts by bookmarking Digital Voices with BoTiffany.podbean.com and follow Bo on social media by searching Digital Voices with Bo Tiffany. Have an idea for a future story? Send your idea to acrmadison@gmail.com. Until next time, grab life by the horns and keep inspiring others.